Hello and welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name is Chris Covage. I'm the Executive Editor with MySecurity Media, and this is our Friday morning episode. We're going to be joined by Phil Rodriguez, Head of Cybersecurity for the Asia Pacific region, commercial for AWS or Amazon Web Services, and the need for security and awareness training. And this is on the back of the federal government's announces $8 million investment in cybersecurity professionals and some training programs, and this is all linked back to the Australian cybersecurity strategy. Our next guest, Phil Rodriguez, Head of Security Asia Pacific region for commercial with AWS, Amazon Web Services. Phil, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks very much for having me on.
Very good. American accent. You're here in Sydney?
Yeah, I'm based outside of Sydney, and
Okay.
I've been living in Australia on and off for about 7 years now.
Okay, nice. Oh, well, you've factored into the culture now. The need for security and awareness training, and this follows on the announcement of $8 million in investment in cybersecurity professionals. And you did some research as well where, again, cybersecurity awareness, we cover a lot on cybersecurity and obviously that awareness aspect. Maybe just briefly your role with AWS and then where you fit into the funding, and then you got some research that you did with ADAPT on CISO's report during the pandemic.
Sure, you got it. So I work with our customers and our internal teams to help them understand how to be secure in the cloud. Nowadays the cloud is touching a really broad aspect of everybody's lives, especially after the pandemic. People are using the cloud every day when they're telecommuting to work, on their work platforms, to educate their children, for entertainment when they get home, to watch some Netflix if they're coming home. So it's a really broad customer base that we have, and a lot of our customers have very high security requirements. So I directly engage with them, and then help our internal teams and the sales and marketing organization understand how to be secure when we're handling customer data and things like that.
So your role, APJ commercial, you're obviously dealing with a larger enterprise. That's how that works, rather than the sort of the consumer base.
So AWS has a very broad spectrum of customers, right? Millions of active customers around the world, hundreds of thousands that use our infrastructure in and around our Sydney region. So I work with customers big and small.
Right.
Most of the customers that have very high security concerns are big enterprises like the Telstras of the world, the Australian tax offices of the world, etc. But I work with small startups and things like that from time to time as well.
Right. And you're client facing basically for AWS, for
That's
head of
exactly right.
security.
Yep.
Got it. What's the current trends or observations that you've got at the moment? Massive uptake in cloud architecture and infrastructure, or they're still working their way through the transformation? Are they finding lack of skills? And this might be a good bring us back to topic. But yeah, what's your observations in the general market for 2021 halfway through?
Yeah, sure. Just super briefly on that, and then we'll pivot right into the skills conversation. Like I said, cloud is touching more and more people very directly in their lives. And what we've seen, especially post-COVID, is the advent of remote working has really distributed the way that people are living, engaging in work, engaging with education, etc. And that distribution means that they're using cloud platforms much more frequently when they do that. So ourselves and our customers are seeing a real strong interest in that space. We've always seen a very cloud-forward focus from Amazon Web Services, and we're recognizing now in the broader market, we're seeing that as well. From a security perspective, this has some implications. This remote working and remote access takes these corporate devices that used to be inside of relatively secure internal networks and brings them home where probably there's a little less security. Maybe your child is also using that laptop to do their educational requirements. And this distribution of the footprint of all of the technology opens up different sorts of security concerns. So it's been a really interesting time for us and our customers.
Yeah, look, I'll plug I don't mean to. I just did an interview with RSA and their Secure ID suite and the authentication process. And again, that's a challenge and a bit of a journey for most enterprise to roll out new authentication, but they kind of need it when the end users are authenticating either at the home or remote or back in the office. It needs to be a bit, and then they're also in that cloud environment. Where did maybe back to topic on the security awareness and training? 44% of CISOs in Australia and New Zealand reported the depth of their in-house security skills is good, but it could be better, with an additional 39% reporting in-house skills are poor or okay. And if we put that against the threat landscape, where we've had hundreds of % increase in cyber attacks, phishing, spear phishing and the like, it's probably not that good. Two questions. One is, how would you rate the maturity of Australia and New Zealand in terms of cloud adoption for enterprise? And then two, if it's very mature, then how does that relate to just a 44% reporting good security?
Sure. So I think there's kind of two distinctions in there, and it's cloud versus security in general, and then the intersection of those two with cloud security,
okay.
right? First of all, cloud, Australia and New Zealand is a pretty mature market. And we see that as evidenced by the large organizations that are embracing cloud deeply. I won't go into them in detail now, but big banks like Commonwealth Bank of Australia and NAB, or even the Reserve Bank of New Zealand over in New Zealand, regulated industries like telco, airlines, electrical, whether this is Qantas or Telstra or Origin Energy, etc. And this is relatively unique globally. It would only be a few other markets in the world where you had really major, highly regulated and governmental organizations using cloud so deeply. That said, everybody is continuing to improve their security skills. And that's why some of the research that we've done lately, some of the research that the external parties have done lately, and the new funding from the Australian government is really focusing on skills. Skills is a journey, just like security is a journey, right? So security has been around since people have been exchanging information. Technology, information security has been around for many decades now. Let's call it the 1940s was probably the start. Organizations.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's always been poor as well when you think about it. And we've always had a very broad range of security, particularly InfoSec as well. We've always been advocating for better awareness. I used to read here in Australia, we used to have our CERT, AusCERT, would do their computer security surveys, even in the 90s and all the way through to the early 2000s, was security awareness was the number one thing that we needed, but was also the number one thing that was a lack of investment in over time. And sorry to sort of jump back to that, but where do you think that, do you have an opinion on where the problem is with security awareness? Is it just the way humans are, that they don't like talking about security, or it's a complacent nature of people, and we just got to be constant in the messaging? What's your observations on why security awareness always struggles?
Sure. I'll talk about that, and then we can talk about the government investment as well. Information security is a very abstract concept. Humans are very good at detecting if a bear is going to eat them, or if it's so cold outside that they need to go back inside of the cave. Our biology is not really tuned to the very abstract nature of what we need to be safe online. And familiarity is the thing that helps everybody get much more comfortable around it. That's why, yes, the research that we've seen shows that organizations are not feeling as secure as they could be. And yes, the overwhelming majority of them said they needed, it was 90% said that post-COVID, they needed more security awareness and identification. So what we need to be doing is investing in these skills much earlier in the cycle. And that's where the government's announcement earlier this week of the $8 million that they've invested in 8 different organizations across Australia to help that skills cycle for the cybersecurity professionals is really important. Some of these organizations are looking at cybersecurity training from the earliest days. So one of the organizations that got funded by the government, an organization that actually we've worked quite closely with, is Grok Academy. Grok Academy sponsors the Schools Cyber Challenge. And the School Cyber Challenge is a program that touches almost every student across Australia. I think their overall intake last year was just over 150,000 students. And students from year 5 through year 12 get to take part in different cyber challenges to, at the earlier ages, familiarize themselves with it, but in the later stages to really dive quite deeply and sort of capture the flag and other highly technical exercises. The program's going on right now. It's an active thing anybody that's paying attention to right now can go and take a part of. The first tranche just finished. The next one starts up next month, and it completes later this year with a highly competitive thing that any of the students can take part in. And they're a really open organization too. So the training materials and all of the things that they're making available through the curriculum online is available for free for people for free to check out. So if you just put in a search browser, School's Cyber Challenge or Grok Academy, everybody can see what that's doing. And that's one of the organizations that the Australian government's chosen to fund now, and an organization that we've been working quite closely with. And that's important because I didn't have cybersecurity training when I was a kid going through school. I don't think, Chris, you would have had cybersecurity training when you were a kid going through primary school, especially. So the fact that we're injecting those skills and that awareness now at an early stage is really important. And there's other things as well. So after we do the primary school education, it's important to then sort of move up a notch. There's universities that are involved in this as well. So we work with RMIT on their Cloud Innovation Center out of Melbourne, which is giving students practical challenges around cybersecurity. Also, organizations like the University of New South Wales have their SecEDU program, and that's taking students at the undergraduate and graduate level, and again, giving them practical cybersecurity challenges that they solve. And in the case of the University of New South Wales program, the students are open sourcing those at the end so that they can have a better access to everything. And then after that, the industry is helping to train as well. So we've got organizations like NAB and National Australia Bank who have their cloud training guilds, where they've trained over 7,000 of their staff on cloud and other digital skills and certified 1,300 of them. And IAG, Kmart, Telstra, there's a number of organizations that focus on that. And then AWS ourselves, we also look to train everybody through our training and certification programs. And we've trained hundreds of thousands of different of individuals across Australia and New Zealand on cloud and digital skills over the last few years. I think Chris might have dropped off, but I'm going to keep talking about this topic since I love it so much. So, one of the things that Chris touched on before that we thought was really interesting was identity and access management. He mentioned before, one of the technology vendors who focused on that space. And that's a great area both for individuals to focus on and for organizations. At AWS, we have the Cloud Adoption Framework, which is a structured way for organizations to move into cloud. And we have programs like the Well-Architected Framework, which is another diagram for how you want to move into these technologies. We always talk about security up front with those quite early. And identity is the first thing we talk about in both of those. Because in the cloud, your username and your password are who you are. And hopefully your two-factor token is who you are as well if you're using multi-factor. So that we embrace identity really importantly, and glad that you pointed out before that there's other interest in the space. We think everyone needs to focus on identity first as a security strategy, especially when using cloud.
Look, I apologize. I just cut out then, but I'm back. So you must have just kept going. And thank you. We're very good for that. Well done. But just touching on identity, I did mention secure ID before, and identity is really great. So well done for keep going, Phil. I was trying to call you during that. So thank you so much. Maybe bring us back straight now then to the topic in terms of the training, and where does AWS fit into that training framework, and specifically who your partners are as well?
Yeah, so I touched on that before in the little segue, so I'll do it briefly. That's okay. It's multi-leveled, right? So what we need as an industry is to be getting skills at the earliest stages. These are things like the Grok Academy program for primary schools. We need things at the university level, which are the programs through RMIT and SecEDU at University of New South Wales. And then we need to get them when they're in their workforce as well. So organizations like NAB and Telstra and Kmart even have these cloud training guilds nowadays. And then we have ourselves, obviously, a huge training and certification program that's trained hundreds of thousands of Australians with cloud and other digital skills. But you touched on something interesting there, which is partners. And actually, this is a really practical way that Australians are getting directly involved with this and helping other Australians. So we have what's called our AWS Partner Network. And this is tens of thousands of people around the world, organizations like you mentioned RSA and other big security vendors, and lots of other really local organizations as well. So these are businesses that started off as very small Australian companies. They focus straight away on cloud and cloud adoption as their major consultancy, and they've been behind a lot of the big cloud migrations that we've seen, and always from a very technical and security-specific focus. So these are partners like iTalk, who've worked with customers like Judo Bank, one of the neobanks, to help them build an APRA compliant. The financial regulator has quite strict rules around what you can and cannot do with technology and other digital systems. So iTalk helped Judo with their migrations for their financial systems into the AWS cloud. Organizations like Versant, based in Melbourne, who's been in the cloud consultancy business for a while now, is another one of our security competency partners. And they've helped a number of organizations, including Services New South Wales, with their AWS footprint and with keeping it secure. Partners like CMD are another homegrown, city-based, in this case, organization who've worked with NIB, the insurer, as they migrated just over a year ago one of the first core financial systems in Australia into the cloud, another APRA-regulated platform. And then finally, because we've got 4 of these partners like Cloud10, who are now part of CyberCX, that big kind of cyber consultancy company, who've worked with organizations like ASIC, the Securities and Investments Regulator, to move their what's called protected data or highly sensitive classified Australian government data into an AWS cloud environment as well. So the skills are needed, and organizations are building those skills over time, especially with the investments from the government. But if you need skills today, you go to the partners in the Australian ecosystem that have these skills locally that are helping other Australian businesses move into the cloud.
Yeah, well, this came out of the Cybersecurity Skills Partnership Innovation Fund. I mentioned it does go back to the Australian Cybersecurity Strategy, and there's a number there. So, so in terms of that strategy, there was a big call. I think 500 being employed just by ASD alone, and then all organisations are seeking that out. What would be a good call to action for those listening that might be interested in this, either developing their AWS skills or just cloud security generally? What's a good point to reach out to for either for yourself, Phil, or for your partners?
Sure. So I think, first of all, keeping with the theme of what we've been talking about, get your kids, get other students in the ecosystem, get other young people that interested and excited about these topics. If you want to use Grok Academy's curriculum, it's up, it's online, it's free, and there's pointers from the technical kind of fun little modules that they have directly into the Australian curriculum, so you can see how they map against the learning principles. So the first tip would be get young people started early. That's actually what's going to solve this. For people that want to get these skills directly themselves, there's a lot of different options. And one of those is just use cloud, right? These are open, publicly accessible, self-service platforms. So there's no reason, with free tiers, right? So many of our services, including big services and security services and small services, have freely consumable tiers. So yes, you put your credit card in, because yes, we'll need to bill you for those services if you consume a certain amount, but those free tiers are quite generous. Thousands and thousands of invocations of our serverless platform, Lambda, whole instance types in EC2 that are completely free to use all the time, etc. So the first tip there is just get started, get your hands on. Get
started,
and there's tons of training that's available. There's formal training through our training and certification programs. That's free and online, some of it. Some of it is virtual instructor-led nowadays. Some of it leads to quite challenging certifications. But it's all freely, the beginning parts of it are freely accessible.
Is there any particular skill sets that you find are in demand at the moment? Rather than maybe there's a sort of a GRC approach, but for cloud itself, is there any particular skill sets that you would recommend? ASD have got a good sort of workflow or career flow in terms of what you should be doing as a developing up your career. But any skill sets at the front line now that you think people would focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm biased towards cloud and cloud security, so that would be the general area.
Just generally cloud,
people. But specifically inside of that, right? This is not the security practitioners of 10 years ago. We're not talking about installing devices and configuring them and monitoring them with human eyes. This is all code, and code that's interacting with APIs. So what we need from the security industry is the same computer science and engineering skills that traditionally people in the developer realm have had. And that's why we're doing these programs with RMIT and University of New South Wales, because those are computer science students that are coding, and we're teaching them the practical application, or we're giving them practical challenges to solve. And they're not solving those challenges by installing devices and configuring them. They're solving those challenges by creating code and then open sourcing it so other people can take advantage of it. So if you look at any of our learning pathways, and AWS has one specifically for security, There's free online, very quick and easy, just a couple hour like security fundamentals courses that lead through very structured security engineering courses up through a capstone security certification on AWS. So that's another great pathway. And again, that security fundamentals training and a lot of other basic training up online is completely free for everybody to take.
Is there, the other one was security awareness training for the enterprise as well. Those skill sets are there in terms of on the platform as well, in terms of what you provide?
No, not directly for organizations. There's other organizations around Australia, and I'll think of a name or two of them in a moment that actually provide that.
Yeah, look, and there's a lot of options there as well. I think sometimes the enterprise has to go find one that suits them best. There's so many different options and also to their maturity. But yeah, I was just wondering if there were those types of options available on there, but it doesn't sound like there are.
Our customers do though. So, we're a building block platform, right?
Correct,
so we offer services to individuals and organizations that want to build other technologies to help their business or help other individuals. And we've got customers that do this, right? Customers who are creating either very technical security awareness and training environments for other developers to get better at the technical specifics of security, or there's other partners that we've had, or customers that we have rather, that are building more general security awareness programs because they've identified what I think you're alluding to. Not a lot of organizations have their own structured in-house security awareness capabilities. So they're creating cloud-based platforms for everybody to be able to take advantage of these types of learnings.
It's getting that maturity across the organization. I think that's the other key challenge here, is just getting general security awareness up. And I think on this particular session, it was also the importance and the need for security training in cloud platforms as well. Look, Phil, thank you so much for that. And I do apologize for cutting out. Had a serious network issue. I think on my modem reset without telling me. But other than that, we've had Phil Rodriguez, Head of Security APJ Commercial with Amazon Web Services. I look forward to seeing the live version, Phil, recorded and the edited version, so I can see what you said while I was away. But thank you for being a professional and to keep going as well. I'm very pleased. So thank you very much. And that was the need for security and awareness training. Federal government announces $8 million investment in cybersecurity professionals. This will be up on the Australian Cybersecurity magazine website and also out as a Cybersecurity Weekly podcast. So Phil, I'll let you go and I'll finish off with our report of the day. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris, very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye. Okay, very good. And apologies for that interruption. Let me just share my screen here. And the report of the day is WatchGuard in their Internet Security Report, Q1 2021. And some of the stats there. So let's just get rid of that one. The key one here was 43.96%. Continue to see almost half of malware over an encrypted connection. 16% increase in 0 days, quarter on quarter as well, in terms of their APT blocker, and the IAV detections lowered by 30% quarter on quarter, which is pretty good. And one other takeaway, APAC, the Asia Pacific region, continues to be out in front in terms of the malware detection by region. And by quite a bit, particularly when you look at the Americas. So Asia Pacific is definitely in a higher threat landscape. So it's something to be aware of. Look, that's it from us. Sorry to cut out there again. That hasn't happened before, but we came back online. So thank you to Phil and to Declan for their time, and have a great weekend. We'll be back on Tuesday afternoon with our Tech and Sec Weekly. Thank you.